Hey, welcome to a new episode, brand new episode of Off the Fence. We're kind of in this marriage theme, and today probably should have like an asterisk disclaimer. Who knows? We might even get kicked off of Spotify or YouTube. I don't know what we'll see.
I don't know if you can.
But just as a precursor, if you're one who wants to know what are you talking about, I'm going to decide if I'm talking about. We're talking about sex, talking about marriage and sex and intimacy and all that fun stuff. And this should be a great conversation, but we don't get to the conversation. This needs to be slow. So we're hey, do you like, we're talking about sex. Look at my shirt. Just do it. Huh?
Just do it.
Anyways.
Very appropriate.
But before we've got chocolate to taste.
Very fitting.
It is.
Bottom line, here's the rules. You eat as much or as little as you want and decide which is the best piece of chocolate. Don't look at who it did, like who underneath you'll see who makes it, but don't do that first. That's cheating. I'll let you guys lead the way.
These look like really nice, like the expensive.
They might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you take your bite and
I'm going to go away. I'm going to chew into the microphone.
You know what ASMR this?
What does that stand for?
What does audio? I don't know, actually.
It just sounds cool.
Yeah. I bet the first word is audio and the last word's response or something. But you can offer feedback as you go if you want. That's totally okay. If you're like, hey, that's good, that's bad,
That one leaves a very interesting, it's got a good texture, but it leaves a very interesting aftertaste.
all right.
This is all dark chocolate.
I think aren't they all dark chocolate?
Do you I don't typically even eat candy or chocolate bars. Like, I mean, if it's laying around the house, I might eat it. But I imagine there's some chocolate lovers listening and tuning in. But
I will rarely turn chocolate down if it is offered.
Would you rather have another serving of whatever meal you just had or dessert?
Dessert.
Okay, see, I want another serving. Like, especially if it's like, hey, here's more ribs or here's more steak. I'd be like, no dessert for me. Another steak, please.
Not me. I'm going for the dessert.
Okay. Interesting.
Provide your feedback, if you would, while I do this.
So I'm from Kansas, though, and Russell Stover's is made in Kansas, and so I love Russell Stover's. That was not one of the choices. But I'm like a low budget chocolate person, so like it's normally Hershey's or Dove or something. So these were all
Need
really
to expand
nice.
your palate just a little
I know
bit there,
that
sister.
today has been enlightening. Which was your favorite?
The Lindt is probably the smoothest and
That was my favorite too.
kind of best aftertaste, I guess, if you say. But the organic, I don't know what that is, but the organic one, you could definitely tell it's a very clean chocolate.
Yes.
Not
was
a lot
the
of
one that-
extra additives and things like that.
Yeah, it left, and maybe that's what it was like. This pure, almost, but like,
You're missing
different.
the food chemicals.
Yes, yes. My body's going, no. Where's all the other stuff?
If you're used to Hershey's and Dove, then
I should.
So,
Take
number
that
one. Number one. You got a number one?
I would have gone with Lindt.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, rarely are we all in unity on this one. And my least favorite, which does make sense, is the organic one.
Yeah.
Which
Very clean chocolate.
I was like, didn't love that aftertaste.
Yeah. It's a little bit too dark for me.
Yeah, but I want to explore that though because what's missing is all the
Yeah,
bad stuff.
which tells you something going, uh-oh.
Yeah, whoops, my body
Yeah, but
really
most
likes.
people are used to the
Yeah.
additives and the.
Oh yeah.
So there you go. We are off the fence on chocolate. And you might have your own opinions. It's fine. But we think Lindt, which, I don't follow the names. Lindt being Lindt. I don't know. Okay.
It was so good and smooth though.
There you go.
I'll probably
There you go.
finish it.
That is the best tasting dark chocolate in our opinion. All right. So, hey, we're going to talk about sex today in the context of, and I think this is important in marriage in the sense of like what helps marriages thrive, but also what could potentially, this topic being it, be like basically making a marriage fall apart, where whether it's spoken or unspoken or anything like that. So we have a guest with us, Twyla. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Hey, thanks for, by the way, joining us. I mean, it's always an interesting conversation. Like, hey, would you join us on a podcast? We're going to talk about sex. But I also know you well enough going,
It's one of my favorite topics.
Awesome. Okay, so would you, just for context, because I know you, but would you tell everybody, hey, this is who I am. I know your husband, by the way. And so just tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get rolling.
Okay. Yes. So I've been married to Chris, my husband, Chris Stanifer. We were married in 2000. So we are going to be celebrating 22 years this year.
Good job.
Mathematically, that makes it really nice.
Yes.
So what year
makes
is it?
it very
Fantastic.
easy.
That's
Yes.
fantastic.
So we've been married for almost 22 years. And a part of that time together, we have done couples retreats over the years together. My husband is much more entertaining and fun than I am. But between me bringing the content and him bringing the fun, we've held a lot of couples retreats over the years. That's been fun. But previous to my current coaching business that I have, I was a therapist, a clinical therapist for 20 years, and predominantly worked with married couples.
Okay.
And kind of my niche was helping couples walk through when there had been an affair or some sort of trust had been broken. And so this topic of sexuality always came up, and I decided to go get trained as a sex therapist and added that to my kind of list of tools in my toolkit, and have just seen God do some really cool things over the years.
Cool.
And so now I use it as a coach, which coaching is more forward thinking.
Okay.
Couples who just maybe have bad habits, but want to work on some things, but they're not in crisis.
Gotcha.
I did that crisis stuff for long enough and saw a lot of cool things, but So that's what I do now. And
Awesome.
Chris and I do some stuff together. We do private retreats as well. And he's just phenomenal because he just brings that other picture and perspective to it, and good stuff. And he likes to talk about sex too.
Yeah. Well, he's a good dude.
A little more unfiltered than me, though.
Well, when we get near the end, I do want to connect people to you, because I think this conversation is important enough that it's not solvable in 25 to 30 minutes.
No.
If you're listening, watching, whatever, you will get information on how to, I'd say, take a next step on whether it be like individual coaching. I know you do conference kind of stuff, seminar stuff. So for those of you listening, tune in for that. But let's start off here. Like, you've met with enough couples, you have enough training. What are couples? What is the deficit? What's going on? Let's say in marriages or in people's relationships. Okay, we've decided to get married. Regarding sex, regarding intimacy, what have you noticed going, oh, that's what you're doing or not doing. That's what's going on wrong. What have you observed? Because I think I'm asking this with agenda. I think a lot of people think they're the only ones.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And that's often why people don't step up and ask for help, because they think they're the weirdos or something. No, absolutely. So that's a great question. The biggest thing that I see over and over and over, whether it's a married couple or a young adult that I'm just coaching on life preparedness, is they come to the table with their own nature and nurture. The things that have given them their perspective. And they have so they're saying the same things, but they mean two completely different things. Okay. So I think, for years, there was even a book about it. It's something like sex starts in the kitchen.
Okay.
And I would disagree with that. I think sex and our understanding and poise towards sex and sexuality in relationships particularly started at our very young age, when we were first taught through nature and nurture what sexuality means and what we're supposed to do with it. And so that is the biggest detriment I've seen, because I will meet with couples and they're both wanting the same thing, but they're saying two completely different things. And when I start looking at their point of references are so different. They're not even in the same book.
Wow.
But and their families did their best. They were good people, but it's just completely different. It's like apples and oranges. And it's like you've just got this chopped up mess of stuff and everybody's frustrated.
So example that a little bit. But add some color to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if a couple's talking about perhaps frequency.
Okay.
Or even, well, let's just stick with that. We'll just stick with frequency. Well, if they were raised and they were taught that sex is mainly for procreation and to honor God in that way, which that is biblical. The Bible talks about that. But if that's what they were taught along the way, and that they should never use their body, like if a woman was taught you should never use your body to get anything sexual, that's not good. So they're coming with that, okay?
Okay.
And then the husband was raised in a family where he saw his mom, his dad pat his mom on the butt, and they were always, flirting and all this and loving and hugging. And so in his mind, he was taught sex is about that relationship and intimacy, and it's fun and use your body, mama, to get daddy going. I mean, so he was taught something completely. They both want an enriched sexual relationship, but they have two completely different points of reference, and they've never talked about it. Because in premarital coaching and counseling, oftentimes all we talk about is the mechanics a little bit and the biblical stuff. And the biblical stuff can get really skewed, really skewed, because, and that's there's one thing about the biblical skewed piece that I see a lot is if a person cannot say no, and I don't care if it's the husband or the wife, then they cannot fully say yes. And I'm telling you what, my husband wants a wife that's saying fully yes. Right?
Yeah.
But if you can't say no, you can't fully ever completely give yourself and
That's so
say
good.
yes.
No.
I mean, it's so the point of reference is huge.
Yeah.
And I see it when I see parents start to try and talk to their kids about sex. That's when you start seeing the different pages that the parents are on. I mean, it's and sometimes that's what will get a couple to come in and talk to me.
Okay.
Because they're trying to figure out how to tell their kids about sex. But in the meantime, I'm going, wait a minute. How does this translate in the bedroom? Because it's not making sense for you to tell your kids about sex. What's it doing in the bedroom? And they both look at me and go, oh. Because you just don't realize it. Because you want the same thing. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, because I think sex sometimes is used as a weapon inside of a relationship where and a weapon used multiple ways, whether it's no or yes, it gets weaponized. And then couples, I don't think, know how to get out of that, because once you do that, you're just almost trapped in your previous statements, your previous here's what we do, here's how we do it, or you're locked. And then you're left at a deficit.
And it's one of the few things that we bring to a marriage with so much emotion tied to it, but so much different ways of getting there. Like where we grew up in households that were very similar, but this one never talked about it, and it was a taboo thing, and this one always talked about it, or vice versa. But it comes already where, like, we've got a lot of baggage that comes with it too. So there's just a lot.
Well, and you have to start asking the question why. So when I meet with a couple, and well, I would say, and David, you can back me up on this because you've met with couples too. Would you say probably 7 out of 10 couples, there's a price tag on sex in the marriage?
Least 7.
At least 7. Okay, we're gonna be generous, right? So I would say at least 7 out of 10 couples. I call it a price tag. I rather than weapon, but it's the same analogy, right? But I look at the couple and I say, before you can get past this, you have to ask yourself why. You have to start asking the why questions. So why is there a price tag on sex? But there's not a price tag on you filling up her car with gas and removing the snow off of her car, or you making his lunches, or why? Why is there a price tag? Because if you don't answer that question, you'll never be able to get past it.
That's good wisdom.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I don't know. It's just the craziest thing.
So as you've met with couples, what are you learning in the sense of, so when you can eventually get to the subject so they're like, all right, so they might eventually can say, okay, this is broken in our relationship. We are, or maybe nice, we're not on the same page on this. What do you begin to do? Walk us through, because I'm hoping that some would be willing to meet with you, but for those who would take a little bit longer, maybe not be willing to meet with you, at least begin to walk us like, so we're not on the same page.
Sure.
Most couples could say if they know if they are or they aren't. If they aren't, what would you begin to say, or how would you begin to lead them?
Well, the first thing that I would do is going to send you back to the episode that you guys just did about communication.
Okay.
Because communication is key. It's critical. Because a topic like sex, you have to know there's safe space in communication because of shame and different things that come with it. And so you got to have some ground rules when it comes to these sensitive topics. And so one of the things I'm going to do is start with communication. I want to see where you are with communication.
Okay.
And I always tell couples, we can talk about intimacy without going like directly to the marriage bed.
Gotcha.
Okay, we can start talking about emotional intimacy, social intimacy. Have you guys figured that out as a couple? Social intimacy, because there's nothing more fun than getting together with 2 or 3 other couples that you're comfortable with, and you're flirting with your spouse, and you're having a good time, and you're out on a date. That is social intimacy.
For sure.
And sometimes that's where we start. Hey, get gussied up and go out on a double date, not just a date with but go with someone. It's that social interaction. Then emotional intimacy. You start talking about that kind of stuff, talking about communication, and then you can lead into it. And there's so many good resources out there that I will use. And there's tens of thousands of books out there. But I have a set of about 8 to 10 that we refer to, that Chris and I know backwards and forwards. They've got all of our tabs in them and everything, that we will use with couples. And so we'll get them into a resource, get them off of each other being the focal point, and try to get some common ground. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So
you brought books with you.
I did.
I have a guess, and I don't know if I'm right, but I think the majority of podcast listeners also are avid, maybe book readers.
Yes, I would think so.
There's probably some research, anyways. So feel free at any time to say everyone needs to read this book, or as an individual or a couple. But okay, so communication, which can then spark emotional connection, even physical connection, and all that. Okay, what else? Because I know there's more. How do we help couples get off the fence, going, this is an issue, and they're not dealing with it? How do they get off the fence?
Well, so if we start in the area of communication, and those pieces, intimacy pieces, then if they're willing, we start asking the hard questions.
Okay.
So I do a lot of work with women, and I've done quite a bit of work with men as well. But with women particularly, I want to get into their thinking and their processes. And so one of the scenarios I use is I will ask parents, so a couple, if they have children or like us, our godchildren, I'll say, and you guys answer this question for me. What's an activity that you do with your kids that's really messy, and usually the setup takes longer than the activity, but it brings so much joy that you do it again?
Yep.
What would be something like that in your
Playing
home?
the sprinkler, for sure.
Okay.
Playing this, making cookies with them,
So making cookies.
or like crafts.
Okay.
Ugh,
Oh, yeah,
right.
painting.
Glitter all over the floor.
Right. There's setup.
Yeah.
It's messy,
Yeah.
Set
but
up,
it
clean up.
brings so
Yes.
much joy to your children. Okay. So this is one of the scenarios I use with couples. And I'll just say, because if one or both of you tells me that you don't want to have sex, but it brings joy to your spouse, okay, it's a little messy. The setup takes longer than the act.
Yeah.
I mean, depending how young or old you are.
Yeah.
Okay, we
Yeah.
get into the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you do it? So in other words, if what's another activity that your spouse lights up when you do this for them, okay? And you have no problem doing that. But yet when it comes to sex, it's about the same amount of time. It's a little messy. Setup takes a little bit.
Yeah.
Why? So I'm going to start asking those
I love it.
questions because if I can help you figure out the why,
Yes.
I can help you start looking at the belief system that's behind it. And so So when you think about having sex with your spouse, there's an emotion that shows up. And when that emotion shows up, I can teach you, it's called heart coaching. I can teach you how to drill down into the desire that's behind that. Because we all have God-given desires.
Yep.
And they're all different.
Yep.
But when I show up to a situation, I'm looking for a desire to be filled. And if I am not going through the desire filler, it's not ever going to be met through a circumstance or a relationship.
Yes.
Yep.
So when Jerry
good.
Maguire, this will date how old we
yeah,
are, says
yeah.
you complete me,
Yep.
they lied because David doesn't complete you.
Right.
But God will use David to fill desires in your life. But you've got to go through God. You can't bypass God. You can't bypass the plumbing and expect David to fill your desires because he's going to disappoint. He's going to screw up. He's going to forget. He's going to wear his T-shirt that says just do it. And no, I mean, but you get it.
Yeah.
He is not your desire filler. And oftentimes sexual intimacy is at the core of who we are, male and female. And it is a hotbed for us to try and get desires filled outside of God. Does that make sense?
I actually think that's the core of it.
Yeah. I mean, that is...
That's where Satan is trying to dwell.
But anybody that's listening, I would say that's not where we start. That's not where we start. We have to... one of the first things I do is I'm gonna look inside your toolbox. Like if you come to see me, you're giving me permission, right? Let me see what's in your toolbox.
Yeah.
Because you might be trying to change a tire with everything to fix a battery. It's like, I need to see what's in your toolbox. But if I can give you the right tools, then eventually we will move into that conversation. Because usually what we think is broken is not really what's broken.
Interesting. So expound on that because I feel like you've got some experience there where you're okay. So even if you want to use specifics, people are going, okay, it's like if I brought my car in and said, hey, this is broken, and the mechanic looks, that's not what's broken. That's not your issue. This is your issue. And I'm like, oh, give us examples.
Okay, so example of that when it comes to sex and marriage, one of the biggest examples of that is a couple coming in and one or the other saying they don't want to have sex with me.
Okay.
And I'll say, oh, okay, let me explore this a little bit because I need to know if that's really what the problem is. And the majority of the time, that is not the problem. It's not that they don't want to have sex with you, but there's some sort of a barrier.
Yes.
And sometimes it's obvious.
Okay.
Sometimes it's, and this was years ago, so if you know any of my current coaching clients, it's nobody right now.
Okay.
But years ago, I had a couple come in, and the man said, in a very curt tone, she won't submit to me.
Oh,
and it's ruining our sex life or something like that. And I go,
I think that sentence you
and
just
I was
said
like,
is ruining your sex
time
life.
out. And I
Yeah.
actually asked his wife to leave the room.
Okay.
I said, you need to go get a drink or something. And I said, she walked out because I didn't want to shame him or disrespect him in front of his wife. She walked out and I said, let me tell you what, buddy, I can tell you why your wife ain't having sex with you. I mean, that right there is why she's not wanting to have sex with you. You know, and so that was an opportunity. And then he had to decide what he was going to do with that information, right? Yeah. But that is one of the biggest things. The other thing that I will hear when people come in is, well, we have kids, and you know, it just doesn't work out. Sex life, trying to raise children doesn't work, and I'm like, okay. I think there's something behind that. Those are the two biggest things that I hear.
Okay.
It's because we have kids, we can't have a sex life. We're going to do that later. Or he or she doesn't want to have sex with me. Those are the two kind of number one things that come up.
So, and I'm not trying to overgeneralize, but my question is, so the couples listening right now who are like, okay, he or she doesn't want to, or we ain't got time for that because of kids or whatever. How do you begin to lead them, or is it too specific? And tell me, David, it's too specific in the sense of like individual circumstances. Are there general things going? Well, here's here's where we begin to go after that.
Well, I think it just really comes down to core discipleship stuff, like wanting to sit down with someone and ask, am I honoring God in my marriage?
Okay.
And I don't mean, God's going to tell you to have sex every 3 days or something like that. That's not what I mean. But am I honoring God in my marriage? And if it has to do with kids or work or whatever, am I honoring my children, myself, with how much I work, or putting my kids before my marriage? I mean, I really think it just comes down to a real basic: am I honoring God in this?
Okay. It's good.
And I mean, and that's where you have to start. And so, and I tell people are so hard on themselves when it comes to this kind of stuff. And 9 times out of 10, they beat themselves up so much that when I meet with people, the first thing Chris and I want to do is let you know how well you're doing. I mean, you're showing up. I mean, I would say to anybody right now, you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? I mean, you're past halftime. I mean, you're in the fourth quarter. I mean, you're ahead of the game. If you're even listening to this, I mean, if you're even listening to something called Get Off the Fence, I mean, hello.
Yeah.
I mean, you are so close to being able to make some changes. But we just have these like faulty belief systems and things in our heads that say, well, you can't change, or it's always going to be like that, or, this or that. And it's like, no, I mean, you are you're there. I mean,
and
you are
sex
so
is
close.
different than like if you're having trouble with your budget, you go A, B, C, D, figure it out,
Yes.
make some decisions and go. I think that there's something so wild about this topic where we've either grown up thinking that it's shame-based. Like, there's just so many different things that for some reason we just can't.
Right.
Because that's one of the questions, actually, for almost everything in our house with our kids. What am I feeling? Why might I be feeling it? And who can I talk to about it? Or kind of just what we do.
Yep.
And with intimacy, I think that's one of the things is, why am I feeling this? Well, am I overwhelmed? Am I trying to do too many things where that just fatigues me thinking about it? Or am I not feeling good about the way that I look? Or am I overwhelmed with other things? Like, just why?
Right.
What's the root of why? Because I don't want to not want to be intimate with my spouse, but I also am so like, bleh.
Right.
And so that's I think when we're talking to people, that's one of the top things is unpacking the core of the issue. And sometimes it might be a decade or two ahead. Like, we're stuck way back in the past, or there's something new that we need to talk about and reconcile. One of the first pieces of advice that we heard was actually, we went to a marriage retreat about a month after we were married. I feel like. And one of the earliest lessons that we learned was, don't say no, say when. Like, if not now, then when. And not as maybe a promise or a threat, but more of an honor of, now's
now's not a good time. Yeah.
But prioritizing and making sure that whichever one of us was like, we felt hurt.
So it's no, because what we wrestled with at the beginning was no felt like a rejection.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
but
man.
Can I speak into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no feels like a rejection because of a belief system that supports that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why that is one that will really mess couples up.
Yes.
Because the other person grew up being taught that no wasn't rejection. No was just no.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
So that's where, and then you got this other person that's just so incredibly wounded by this no. And I'm just going, wait a minute, something's not making sense here.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
you can tell they're both good and well intended because you're looking for that.
Yes.
Right. Now,
Yes.
anybody that's in a domestic violence kind of situation, this stuff does not apply, right? But in a good and well intended situation, that right there, that is another thing that always comes up. No feels like rejection. But to the other, it's like, what do you mean? No's not rejection.
Yes.
So it's that's a big one right there.
This is what I love, though, because I think so often in marriages nobody talks about it.
Right.
They don't say, "Hey, we're really battling this." They just don't say anything, and they keep just going towards the future with their eyes covered or whatever. But I love it because so much of And this is how good God is, that so much of unpacking this kind of stuff brings a fuller life with some great time having sex too. But that's what I love about this type of stuff is you just got to talk about it. So anybody listening or watching, I think that's what's so powerful is when we're struggling, we don't have to just keep circling the frustration and the hurt.
Right.
Like step out of that because there's so much more that God wants to unpack and free you from in the process of this one thing. It makes me so happy.
And one of the first things that I help couples figure out is why do they want it to be better?
Yeah.
Because anytime I work with a couple, I want to find out the why. Why do you want to make your marriage better? Why do you want your sex and marriage to be better? Why do you want communication to be better? And one time, I had a woman tell me a long time ago, for the shoes.
What?
Her husband made a lot of money, and she liked shoes. And I told her, I said, I can work with that. if you will be honest with yourself and with me, your coach, in why you want this to be better, then I can help you. I can help you with that.
Yeah.
But helping them to find their why. So it could be because you want to tell your kids about it. It could be because you want your early experiences with sex to be a testimony to other people.
Yes.
I can work with that.
Yeah.
But sometimes people have a hard time nailing down their why because culture tells them what it should be.
Right.
Yes.
Their family tells them what it should be. Their pastor might tell them what it should be. Their whatevers. And so they get really confused. And they don't know what their why is.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't know what you're shooting for,
Yeah.
if you don't know why you're trying to work at it, you'll give up pretty quickly. And intimacy takes work.
Yes.
But boy, is it worth it.
Totally agree. So it makes me think. I think one of the natural questions, because this stuff doesn't get talked about, is do couples even know what healthy is, and do they even know what unhealthy is? You know, in the sense of where. So you got people listening and going, well, I mean, our sex life is or it's awesome, or it's. How do we know if it's good? I don't want to say good or bad. You know what I'm saying? How do we know if it's in the right direction or not? How do we know that it's feeding intimacy in our relationship, or how do we know like, oh wow, we should really address this? Would you have any wisdom, any guidance, any experience on going how? Because I think, I mean, I've listened to podcasts on various things. I'm a pastor. I get coached by other pastors, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I wasn't asking that question. You just where I'm going, okay, you're helping me understand that I am healthy, that we are doing a good job. Or you're helping me understand, oh, I've got an issue that I need to deal with.
Right.
What, just for couples going, how do I begin to discover?
Well, okay, I wish there was a magical formula, right? I wish there was a magical formula. I wish I could tell you that if you're having sex twice a week and both of you are fully engaging and climaxing at least once in that experience for the ladies, right? Boy, then you're set, right? I wish it was that easy. But I'll tell you it's not. I mean, there are some couples that are comfortable with having sex 3 times a month. But they want both parties to be fully engaged and that works for them. So here's how I always tell couples to gauge how well you're doing in this area. Are you able to talk about it? That's the biggest thing. Can you have a conversation about it? So
What does talking about it look like?
So talking about it is just being able to say to your spouse. So Chris and I, early on in our marriage, because I had already worked with couples that didn't make it, I was a little freaked out. So I made Chris read all these books and everything. And so one of the books we read was How to Get Your Sex Life Off to a Great Start.
Okay.
And Chris will tell you, hands down, to this day, best book he's ever read.
Really?
Because it helped him understand me and himself.
Okay.
And so one of the things in that book is, and it taught us, is how to talk about it. So Chris shares his story and journey with, he has dealt with pornography in his past and has a very high sex drive. And so he has worked with mentors and has accountability and all that stuff. So he deals with that. That's his thing. But there are times when he needs to connect with me sexually. So for him to say to me, he'll either call me during the day or he'll tell me the day before something. Listen, in the next couple of days, I really need to connect with you sexually. I'm like, fantastic. I mean, I love that. See, I don't think about sex as much as he does, but I would love to be able to do that for him. But he gives me a heads up. We can talk about it.
Right.
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 So he's and currently I've had some health issues the last 10 years that have just wreaked havoc on my body, and so it's kind of messed me up in that area of sexual desire and things. But I will ask him, am I communicating to you that I need you, that I want you, and that, so it's my responsibility to bring it up. That's having conversations about it. That's doing that. That's if you've got kids in the home, for the wife to be able to say to the husband, for Katie to be able to say to David, listen, I just feel like a rag doll. The kids have been pulling on me all day. I would pee and poop everywhere. I'm just over it. I need to feel like a woman tonight. And that's not necessarily code for bring on the sex, baby.
Right.
But it is code for, honey, I need you to come home and acknowledge me as a woman.
Gotcha.
To acknowledge my femininity and what that's communicating about sex, right? Or for David to be able to come home and say, somebody at the office today made a joke. Man, it kind of hurt I just kind of hurt me as a man. I mean, I just, to be able to say that to her and her to be able to say, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. She didn't laugh. She didn't chuckle. She didn't make a joke about it. But you guys can talk about who you are as sexual beings. That's one of the best ways that I can tell you.
Yes.
Because, and be able to ask, how often do we want to have sex? As we've gotten older, Chris is much more interested in interactions where we're both fully engaged. Whereas when we were younger, first married, those quick encounters, he needed those because he was a lot younger, higher sex drive, whatever. But as you age, things look differently.
Yeah.
But and that's okay. But you have to agree with that. Because we went through a season in our marriage every other day, and I just thought it was a hoot because I wanted to see how long this could go on. and so it was kind of fun. So we used to have fun with it, stuff like that. But Chris that's not who we are today. But being able to talk about it, being able to talk about you as a man and things that you encounter in your day, you as a woman, things that you encounter every day, that is one of the first places where you can go. But most couples go to frequency. We don't have sex enough, or we don't have sex like in the movies, or we don't do this, or we don't do that, or I haven't bought any lingerie in 2 years, or that's where they go. And it's like, boy, that doesn't sound like a standard I would find in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right. No.
But it's being each other's safe place too, and that's what I love about it, because that's where it starts. But often it's so easy to say we're not having that, but I don't want to take the time to have that safe space, or I don't know how to make the time.
It's all about that, and so and then couples will often ask me about different things that they invite into the marriage bedroom, and if they are believers, my first question is going to be, is that God honoring? But you need to both think about that and pray about that. But God loves our creativity. Bring on the chocolate sauce and the feathers and whatever. I don't know. But God loves our creativity, and He loves this space in our marriage that is so protected and so sacred that no one else is a part of. But it's okay to ask a pastor or a Christian counselor or something, is this okay? And if you're asking that question, it gives people like me, a coach, a pastor, to be able to press in a little bit and go, why are we asking that question?
Yes.
Right? But so sometimes some of the work that Chris and I will do is just help couples think a little creatively outside of their box. There's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, the places online or the places in the area where you can find that stuff, they're kind of raunchy.
Yeah.
So we like to help couples talk about it so that they don't have to go to those places. And just have some silliness and things. It's appropriate in a context with husband and wife and husband and wife. But we could have that conversation. But that's where I tell couples to go first is How are you communicating about it? Are you able to communicate about it? And, and then we can go from there.
Yes.
But trying to put yourself into a frequency thing or a performance thing or something like that, you're just going to get yourself in trouble because guess what? Our bodies are getting older, whether we want them to or not.
Yep.
And so I learned that in my sex therapy training that the best thing we can do is help couples learn that sexual intimacy is so much more than intercourse. So much more. And so the couples that are going to have the most fulfilled life in the area of sexual intimacy are the couples who understand that.
Yep.
Yes.
That's gold. In fact,
Yeah.
if you're
100%.
watching or listening, you're going to want to just go revisit this episode because I think, I know for Katie and I, going back to your why question, sometimes it's not just like, hey, I want to do this. And here's why. That begins to solve some of the, this is the kind of relationship we do have. Because that's the kind of relationship you want with your spouse is this is what I need and this is why, or this is what I want and this is why. It begins to go, it's not that I'm just, because I think we put stereotypes on people. You and I have talked about this before.
Yep.
Well, I'm a guy. And you're like, well, that actually doesn't fit all stereotypes. Or I think it's gold. And I wasn't, you answered, I think in a way that all of us can say, I can apply that. That's so before I help people, I want to help people connect to you because there's going to be some people who are going, so I need more. We need to talk about some more. Let me give you an option that maybe you don't always get, where you're meeting with a couple, or maybe you're teaching in a seminar fashion, and there's some things that you're like, yeah, I would say that probably the fourth or fifth session with that person. But is there anything, and fine if not, that you're like, you know what, I want to say this to couples right now. I want to speak this, and it doesn't have to be like, I'm not looking for anything like life changing.
Sure.
But I know sometimes when you're a teacher or you're a coach or a therapist, you're like, here's what I really want to say. Here's what I just want to lay this out. Do you have anything that you're just like, I just really just want to say this? If not, I'll have people connect to you, but
No, something that came to mind, I had jotted it down, that I think can help couples kind of bring this home a little bit. It's very simple. Your sex drive, which is what we often refer to, shouldn't determine a yes or no. And sex drive is not gender specific. One of the biggest things that couples get caught up in is sex drive. And like me, I've had some crazy health issues, and if you're on any medication, I mean, all kinds of stuff messes with sex drive, right? But yeah, I think if I could say one thing to couples right now in this moment, I would say sex drive shouldn't determine a yes or a no to sexual intimacy, and it's not gender specific. I mean, the tides of terms for ladies. I mean, it's very different now than it used to be.
Well, I agree with you, and I also don't like the concept of just blanketing somebody with,
Right.
Because again, who knows what their experiences have been in life, and I think that's so rich. So right now, whether people will or not, I know they should. I would love for them to connect with you.
Sure.
What's the best way if they're like, I need a conversation, or I need to attend something that you teach, or I need to send you something, whatever.
Sure.
How do they do that?
Well, one of the things I always tell people with is it's key that you have chemistry and connection with somebody. If you're going to coach with them or counsel with them or whatever. So I always tell people, when you check in with a coach or a potential counselor, it is literally an inquiry situation. Because then both parties can decide if it's a good fit. So I would say just take the pressure off. If you're interested at all in any further conversation, coaching around marriage or any of this topic, consider an inquiry conversation with me and take the pressure off.
Cool.
Yeah.
And both parties, both couples, because then you have to agree together. But so how you would do that is if you would text this number, so you want to write this number down, it's 605-836-1723, 605-836-1723. And if you text off the fence sexy, I will send you back a link to my calendar and we could do an inquiry call. And you will, if we do any work together, I will give the off the fence sexy discount.
Nice.
and set people up in that fashion.
I love the inquiry model. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because it's just a nice little,
Yes.
I
Yes.
love
I
that.
always tell people that, don't put the pressure on. Yeah, we're going to do this. What are we going to do? I mean, talk to myself and Chris, and sometimes he gets to jump in on the conversation. See if it's a good fit.
Yeah.
See if what we do
Yes.
is what you are interested in. And if not, I know a ton of people in the field, and I can connect you with somebody that I think you'll work well with, even if it's not a good fit for us.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
Love it. So if you're listening or watching, there you go. Yeah, like, don't let your marriage have this deficit where you just try to survive it, or you let it become the demise. You now have a tool. If you ever want to, you want a sign from God, perhaps today this is your sign from God. So thanks, Twyla. Thanks
You're
for being
welcome.
vulnerable with us
Thank
and
you.
letting us have this conversation. I'm guessing there'll be another day that we'll bring you back and we'll have more conversation. But,
Awesome.
thanks for listening. Tune in next time. We love you very much.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.